defence. Walter makes a run ahead of it. Bergkamp suddenly changed pace through the centre. It's Bergkamp! That's magnificent! The move, and then this, which left Dabby's ass totally stranded.
Hello, and welcome to Bergkamp Wonderland. We are an Arsenal podcast. Dramatic pause as usual. My name is Chris. I am your host, and good evening to everyone, whether you'll be live or whether you'll be in delay. We are here to, have a little kickabout with the lads. All right, Ivan? Have a good week, mate. Yes, I'm joined by Mr. Josh, the Human 23. He's better known as Josh Dorr, but I thought I'd read his Twitter timeline. No, that would take forever. His Twitter, what's that thing called, Josh?
Handle.
Bio? Handle, that's it. Handle, like the moustache.
There we go.
How the devil are you, sir?
I am all right, thank you. We have left our ABW morning phase, and we're now back podcasting. It's unrelated to the football being back. Yeah, true.
It's the evening, not morning.
That is also true. But yes, we are back. Football is back, and now it's gone again. Cruelly snatched away from us. Maybe it's because we played a 15-year-old and they cancelled football.
Yes, we'll come on to that, I'm sure. And also stepping in at last minute notice because John has some family stuff to deal with. So hope all is well, John. Danny, you are here. You still live in the basement of ABW, turning that hamster wheel to keep the lights on. How does it feel to be called up to the main roster, but you're very much not a 15-year-old?
My candle's been burning bright for the last 2 weeks, and we can all hope and pray that Easter gets here soon. Is it Easter next? Which one of the birthdays is next? I never remember. Yeah, I'm good. I'm glad you practiced your intro. That was always smooth and sweet, much like yourself. How are you?
Well, naturally, I'm all right. I'm a little bit. Well, I think the phrase is pissed off at the moment because I have a very, very bad hip. And it is preventing me from clogging more miles up on the wonderful concrete streets of Plymouth. So, yeah, I'm a little bit cheesed off. I had a very miserable run yesterday, but hopefully it will sort itself out. If not, I'll chop the fucker off. So, there's the demonetization sorted for the week. Anywho, let's jump in then. So, as probably everybody will know in the chat, and indeed who's listening to this in delay, it's been a while since we've done a podcast. Obviously, we didn't do one last week because things. We won't be going into those tonight because it divides opinion, so we'll just leave that stuff over there. We'll talk about the football here. But it does feel like a while ago since we beat Brentford by 3-0. Josh, I shall start with you. And the first question I'm going to ask you is not about a player, not about a performance. It's a general question. And it is simply thus. How far do you think this team can go? What are our expectation levels right now? Because I keep hearing people going, oh, maybe we're a bit better than we thought we were.
Well, I suppose I've got to take it from rather than any irreputable sources, and people can define where we draw that line of whether or not a source is reputable or not on their thoughts on football. I'm going to go with the manager that we just beat 3-0. And Thomas Frank, I thought he was possibly talking us up a bit more than I would have thought. So perhaps we need to recalibrate. But he said that we were up there with Man City in terms of teams that we've played or they've played, and we completely nullified them in that game. So perhaps there's something in that. I can't see why a manager that we've just smashed, completely tactically dominated, albeit, the scoreline wasn't necessarily as large as some teams have put past, in the early parts of the season. We can say the scoreline was, flattering or unflattering for us. But for a manager to say that about us, there is a bit of It's interesting, especially as I think everybody involved in the Arsenal fan base would say that wasn't even close to our strongest 11 in terms of arguably 2 key players out. I suppose it shows how transformative clearing out the wankers is, and Gabriel Jesus turning up at the club. I think obviously you've got to give some credit as well to the other signings that have come in, but there seems to be greater solidarity around the mentality at the club, and I think that's one thing that Arteta's always spoken about. Even when he joined the club, we heard him say that about Kieran Tierney, that he was the guy that you'd want to. Yeah, he was the poster boy for how to be in training. And everybody who has joined since then, you can go back and see historically about coaches talking about X signing that we've made, how they are in training and how good they are. Ben White is another one. You can find countless articles on he plays training like it's the actual game, with that kind of maturity. And I think, contrary to what a lot of, I don't want to say the glass half full brigade, because I don't think their glass is even that full. I think it's smashed on the ground and full of piss brigade, weren't that hot on us with the All or Nothing documentary. I think some of us who may have actually watched them beforehand knew that, yeah, it may have the rose-tinted PR goggles associated to it, but I don't think we can underestimate how it's brought everybody closer to what's happening in the squad. You know, despite everything we watched was from 12, 15 months ago, and some of those decisions we didn't agree with at the time, and probably still don't agree with them. They're still seeing a little bit of that daylight, of the magic that is that kind of black box of what happens at Arsenal. I think that helps. Even seeing, there'll be people that, I think I said on the last podcast, will take the piss out of some of the things we saw from Mikel Arteta in terms of his, should we say, rousing speeches. You've just got to remember that we are watching a 30-second snippet of a 15-minute halftime team talk, that he's not just going, all right, boys, gives him a slap on the arse, go out there and win the game. There's a bit more to it. I'm almost certain that, there's going to be more than just the short snippets we're seeing to a halftime team talk. So I think that's kind of helped, that seeing that kind of emotion, seeing that the players cared as well, a bit more than we would have seen with just the well-shot YouTube training videos and the, especially from yesteryear when we've had, and we could pick a player that we've got rid of in the last 3 seasons, and you'd always see them having fun in training, but you wouldn't necessarily see, you just go, oh, look, the squad's really happy, they're in training. But now we know what a squad should be looking like when they're happy, performing well, but also they're getting stuck in. So I think, to actually answer your question rather than carpenter it, our expectations, I'm waiting to see what our opposition managers are saying when we beat them, to be honest, because they're the people that they know what they're talking about at that point. And whether or not Thomas Frank is trying to line himself up for a move when Mikel eventually probably moves on, who knows? But I think there's some. We've had a decent run so far, and I'm sure we could go back into the fixtures, and I would say, you know what, maybe we did struggle against a promoted side, but we got a win against them, or a lower league type side from last season. We still got a win against them. There were other teams who should be and were being talked up, and possibly even in the betting odds, easily shorter odds than us to be competing with the Erling Haaland machine that is Manchester City for the title. But one of them's already sat their manager, and the other one is struggling to get lucky to get a draw against Fulham Should we put it that way? And everybody can work out which team I'm talking about for that one. So yeah, I think I'm still keeping my expectations a little bit tempered. We've got an October is going to be toit, to say the least.
And you mentioned the name of Mikel Arteta's forthcoming autobiography there, Clearing Out the Wankers, will be available in all good Waterstones for you next summer. Danny, you're a little bit like me in that you're kind of, well, let's just put it like it is. We're kind of old, we are. It's just facts. We are one of the or two of the older members of this parish now. You much older than me, naturally, but
you couldn't just leave it, could you?
No, couldn't just leave it there. But what we have said for a long time is we just want to actually enjoy our football, don't we? We want to watch an Arsenal that is fun to watch, that's enjoyable to watch, that gets us off our seat, and just have that little bit of belief. It's the hope that kills and all that. The one thing I think, like Josh has touched on there, and in this performance again against Brentford, is that we are enjoyable, aren't we? We're a likeable bunch. There's a lot of likeable players. The fans are, for now, united with the squad. I think Loki made the point earlier on in the chat a short time ago. He said we're only sort of 2 defeats off an actual meltdown. I'm convinced some people are literally a concession of a goal away from a meltdown if you follow along on Twitter, which I still can't understand. Side rant very quickly, but I genuinely don't understand how these people who instantly tweet about everything throughout the game, I don't get how they even watch the game. Like, it blows my mind, Anyway, that's a side rant. But for you, Danny, is this side starting to get back up there with the sides that you enjoyed watching in the good old days, quote unquote?
Well, there's 3 for me, 3 good old days: the beginning of the George Graham years, the beginning of the Arsene Wenger years, and then the Invincible years, which is, I don't think anyone's ever going to do again. And all 3 of those are exciting, but for different reasons. And out of that lot, I kind of have the parallel with this season would be the beginning of the George Graham era, because we've got all the young men coming through. And we've already seen the evolution of Saka going from he's the only player on the pitch that is actually going to do stuff for us and scoring goals, to now he's being the one that is setting up and getting assists and setting up other people to do stuff. And so that the whole thing, and then the way that it was always going to be whether you are going to go for Arteta's his ways of constantly every second he gets shouting at you what to do this, do that, go here, go there, all hold hands, all do the can, all do all these other kind of things, that these group things. Personally, I couldn't cope with that. Like Aubameyang, I'd be straight out of there. I mean, if I wasn't an Arsenal fan, I wouldn't be. But to do that was either going to be a complete car crash, like at the bin dippers, where Brendan Rodgers had those envelopes, and he said, "Well, who's going to be the one who's going to let me down? It's going to be one of these envelopes." We all saw that the bin dippers ended up being an absolute nightmare, and looks like they're having a terrible season already. They're falling apart, which is nice to see. And it was either going to be everyone's going to be on board with Arteta, or everyone's going to fall out of him and go, what is this new age nonsense? Why are you drawing silly faces on a whiteboard? Why is everyone singing Kumbaya before the game starts and all these things? And it seems the ones that aren't going to join the cult of Arteta have gone. And all the ones that are going, yeah, I like this. I like where it's going. And then some of the players that he's brought in for an absolute bargain amount of time, amount of money, like Vieira, I'd never heard of him. And for him to come on, and we saw that he did quite well in the under-23s, as did Marquinhos. And he's bringing in these players that just fitting in superbly into the side, while other teams all over the place, especially like the bin dippers, are going and spending an absolute fortune, breaking up their team, having players that have got no idea how to play Premier League football, getting sent off because someone gave them a little bit of a poke or something. And you can see teams falling apart. And meanwhile, all these other teams are falling apart from Man City, who are just unbelievable. We're not going to get into that because that does make you angry. But it's all the other teams around. The Spurs are up the top half of the table playing terrible football. I mean, how the hell they won that game 6-2 is I've got no idea.
Because they were playing Leicester, that's why.
Yeah. But it's just great to see, and it's only going to get better. And people who were on the Arteta cult from the early days are probably now going, I was justified to say all that lot, where you and me, we weren't. We couldn't see it. But then I changed to, well, if he's going to do well, I'll back him. If he's doing bad, I'll moan about him. And I just think everything's falling into place. But Loki was right with that bit where he was saying that we're just 2 games away from a disaster. That part of being of the Arsenal fan base is never gonna go away, because certain people are making a living on the back of Arsenal being rubbish. And at the moment, they must be pulling their hair out and getting second jobs working on a market stall or something like that, because they're not really making the money they were. Apart from a couple that have changed their tune and going, "Oh no, I've always been behind the club. Oh, it's always been fantastic." No, we know they are. We know you are, you scumbags. But I just love it. I look forward to the games. Like Josh said at the beginning of the show, we're all away from football. When we're back, I know we're all away again. Absolutely pointless. For the bloody what's this nonsense they're playing now? Nations League?
Yeah. Which I get that they replace friendlies with it, but imagine putting a Nations League 2 games before a World Cup now when we've got this season. Like, what? Just put a pin in it for a year, It's bloody mental.
Money.
Well, to be fair, there was going to be a round of friendlies that would have sat in at this point anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Because there always is 2 games that comes in for it's the pre-World Cup stuff as well, isn't it? You can see from the fact that our 3 Brazilians haven't gone, and he's.
But what happened to the good old days of like before Euro '96? Do you remember they had like the tournoi, didn't they? And where you had like some friendlies in what would be the off season. So why they couldn't just go, right, we'll play up to 2 weeks before the World Cup, then you all go on training camps, or then you all go. That's when you play your friendlies. Like, to do an international break right now, I just don't know. I don't know. But anyway, let's go back to the game itself then, and just pick out a couple of bits and bobs. First goal was from Big Willow, Josh. Nice little header. It reminded me a bit of, we seem to be doing a lot with this set piece coach has come in and reinvented the wheel a little bit. But it reminded me, Danny will appreciate this, the old days of Steve Bold flicking on at the near post for Tony Adams coming in around the back. It's kind of a bit like that. The difference is that Saliba got on the end of this corner and headed it over the goalkeeper and into the far post. I think Jesus was coming in on it as well, although I don't know, he might have been offside. But good header. He was rewarded with a full France call-up, which is lovely. And there is some discussion that this contract may not be far off to secure his future. And he was speaking in France in the last 24 hours, saying that he feels very happy in London, very settled, and he really feels like he's part of the club fully now, which is great to hear. Do you feel like he is now, not at a stage where he's undroppable, because anyone can go through a bad patch of form, of course, but do you feel like he is starting to become a cornerstone of this defence, and in partnership with Gabriel, who I think's gone underneath the radar quite a lot this season? I think he's been very good.
Oh, I don't know if we agree on Gabriel being very good.
I don't know. I think he's been pretty good.
Yeah, I think maybe having 2 very cool and calm, collected centre-backs alongside Gabriel shows how less cool, calm and collected he can be. But sometimes I think it's the politest way of saying, because I don't want to say he's erratic, because he's not. But you know what I mean. He's got, he's less round, he's less assured, I would say, than Saliba and Ben White. But in terms of on Saliba with that header, yeah, I kind of agree, coming back to almost the Koscielny per Mertesacker era of corners. Remember having Per at the front post. He was being there for the flick on, and it was coming. I don't necessarily think it was the goal that I expected us to score. Not necessarily from the goal scorer either. There were definitely chances for us, but it was a great way to get the game underway, because you could see that, I think, even of yesteryear, we would have had that kind of period of dominance. It still would have been 0-0, and then we end up conceding a sloppy goal and our heads go. This seems the difference with this season is we're able to convert those chances. Now, whether or not that's because I think there's a little bit more confidence in the side that if you miss a chance this season, there'll be another chance. Whereas I think in previous seasons, we were talking about Saka, he'd only really get 2 or 3 chances in a game. And yeah, he'd probably convert one of them. but he'd snatch at the other two. You could see the same from Smith Rowe. He'd snatch at chances, knowing that actually we don't necessarily create enough because of issues around the field. Obviously, I think the changing in our formation has helped. I think Odegaard pushing on as well has really helped us in terms of creating more chances. And again, we can spend probably... there needs to be a count, I think, Danny, for how many times someone mentions Gabriel Jesus on the podcast, because it's going to be, I think, everybody's second point to everything, is that there now seems to be a confidence around the rest of the team that they can try something. And if it doesn't come off, well, it's fine, because Jesus will create a chance. He may even put one away. And I think we saw that in the game, that just after the first goal, and we can go through the subsequent goals, that those are players that are trying things in some cases that they wouldn't necessarily try last season, because they go, no, I need the perfect chance. Whereas we're taking half chances now and converting them, or at least that's what I kind of see. And I think there's also luck on our side. Saliba looks to be, right now, you question how Tomiyasu gets back in the side. Basically, and you would have said last season, oh my God, we can't be playing Ben White out at right back. One, because it screws us in the centre, and secondly, Tomiyasu is one of our revelation of a player for us. And I think that's the real thing right now, is perhaps this is something Arteta, Edu, so Richard Garlick and Joshua kind of knew, that when we picked up Tomiyasu, there was a reason why he wasn't necessarily... We didn't go after the kind of Hollywood right back that would expect to start every game. And we picked someone a bit more humble, someone who would appreciate it. Almost not in the full Elneny, I'm happy to sit on the bench for most of the season, play 10 games and still pick up my international caps. But with the adaptability of Tomiyasu, it seems like it's all fit at the right time for Saliba to come in and mount stake his claim to playing at centre-back. And at the same time, there's so much pressure on him because, as you say, I've already named 2 other players that could be taking his place for centre-back, and he's not put a foot wrong. There'd be some managers who don't trust in youth, who would have dropped him after his own goal, who would have dropped him after just one little mistake. But we've got that camaraderie as well as a squad now, where if one of them makes a mistake, your mate's going to be there and clear it up for you. I don't know if Mr. Liverpool fan is still watching, but let's just say no one's clearing up for Van Dijk and no one's clearing up for Trent Alexander-Arnold anymore, are they? There seems to be a
grace.
Yes, it's amazing what happens when a horrific knee injury comes out and a player sadly loses his time and place. But Chris, I've carpented that one for you as well, just on the first goal.
I did wonder where we were going to go at one point. I thought we were going to get a full match review then, but no, some very fair points. And one does lead me on to that second goal, Danny, because, like I say, we could probably be fairly brief in that we know Jesus is good. We know how much of a revolutionary signing he's been, and God forbid if anything happens to him. But I don't think that goal got anywhere near as much praise as it should have done. It was a really good header, I thought, to get the power, to get that sort of to it wasn't a looping header and it wasn't a power header. It was kind of a mixture of the two, perfectly placed, but over the goalkeeper. And the assist from Granit Xhaka, in midfield, the second coming of Jesus himself. All of a sudden, bless him. But no, really, really good assist from Granit, and just a very intelligent, proper striker's finish, wasn't it, from Jesus? And I don't know about you, but I never felt like Brentford were in the game once we got that second.
Yeah, there's been a lot of excuses coming around about why that was, because everyone was in mourning because of the passing of the Queen and because of the time kickoff it was. And
wait, what?
Yeah, I know, it's breaking news. I hadn't heard it on the news. And then all the other big teams that are fighting for a top 4 position have gone there, and none of them have had much of a result, according to AC Jimbo and that lot today when I was listening. But then you look at there's little partnerships going on all over the pitch. Who would have thought that there'd be a great partnership with KT and Xhaka down the left-hand side? Because I've still got my notes from the game. Great build-up play. Xhaka out to the left to KT back to Xhaka, who lobs it over the defence for Jesus to header it in. Now, you're right with the kind of header that he scored. It reminded me a little bit of the Olympic curling, where they just have to slightly glance the other thing to knock it out of the way. He just got a bit of a head to it. He didn't have to power it. Didn't have to header it down. He didn't do an Ozil and trying to header it into the floor and then back up again and then try and dismay the goalkeeper. I just thought, no, I'll get a little touch on this and then it will go home. And the amount of difference it makes for the club, knowing that there's going to be someone there who is going to be able to mop up chances, whether he's going to be running through the entire defence to score a goal, whether he's going to be tapping them in, headering them in, laying off other people. It's almost the complete player that we needed up front, because we've had players like that in previous years who will score your goals, like Sanchez, incredibly selfish, incredibly undisciplined when it came to what position he was playing in. You'd often find him going back to the goalkeeper and getting the ball off him or getting it off the defence and running up the whole length of the field. And remember how often we used to moan about Sanchez and how often he'd give the ball away or get the ball taken off him. We've bought something that Man City fans must be looking at and thinking, my God, that he would be a magnificent backup to Haaland, because Haaland, anyone who has watched Dortmund or Bundesliga knows that Haaland is not a 60 game a season player. Every season he's going to get some injury or another, and when he does, who are they going to play up front? I know they had that other young Spaniard that they sold back to Barcelona. I think they've got was it a Uruguayan or a Paraguayan that they've got in, or I think it was something like that. There you go.
Yeah,
and it was somewhere where it's warm. But that's the whole thing where you're seeing little individual places of players playing well together. And Xhaka he's the player that now for Arsenal that he was at Mönchengladbach all those years ago. And he must look back. I mean, when Arteta came to Arsenal, he wasn't allowed to be the player that made him famous at PSG and Rangers and Everton. He couldn't be that player, and he was never that player. He gave up his entire career because Wenger was incapable of buying a proper defensive midfielder. And it's just nice to see that that Xhaka is doing that. And what is he, 29 now? If he plays like that, he's got another 3 or 4 years with us left in that position, which some people are going to like.
Isn't he older than that? I may be completely wrong. I thought he was in his 30s now, 31. I'm going to have to check that. I could be wrong.
We're all scrolling.
29.
Yeah, he is 29. Okay. It's very, very, very rare that I'm ever wrong, as everyone knows. I'm the Oracle, but
it's like he's been here since he was a kid. It's like he's made his debut as a 15-year-old or something.
He is the Arsenal cockroach, isn't he? That he will still be around forevermore. And all jokes aside, he's played very, very well. And it has kind of gone full circle. It is nice to see the fans, appreciating him. I will always live in that camp of saying there will always be a better player that we could have in that position. I don't think that's unfair. Just think that's how I feel. But you can't deny he does have leadership qualities. He is certainly a lot better in that more advanced position because he's further away from our goal for a start. But he's showing he has that creative element, but with that disciplinary disciplined side where he will get back in and cover the space. And I think it's made Partey a better player as well. So, I mean, yeah, fair play to the guy. He's having a great season.
And I think another one for the ABW bingo for this season, All or Nothing, did a huge... There was a big piece on him as well. And I think that helped restore back to the fans as well. Seeing...
The I'll take the blame bit.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's the kind of...
Well, doesn't he?
Yeah, he talks well. There's the bit with his family, so you can see that he is a human. Obviously, he's got a front door key as well. We all know that he is the man who has the keys to the doors. Even at 15, he hadn't made his Premier League debut, but he had a front door key. That was always his big thing for Xhaka. But yeah, I think that's another thing that's helped reintegrate him to a wider part of the fan base. It's just seeing a bit more of his human side, rather than a twat that gets a red card every other week.
Yeah, that's always a bonus. And talk to me about Fabio Vieira, Josh, because he got the third goal. It's nice to hear the songs back. He comes from Portugal, sounds a bit better than comes from Senegal for my money. But yeah, in all fairness, he was one of those signings I think that we made And because he had that injury when he first came in, we didn't see him in pre-season. He almost got put in a drawer a little bit, and people had either forgotten about him or they'd overhyped him, having never seen him other than on YouTube. I'd seen him a bit at Porto last year, and I thought him and Vitinha were the two standouts of that team. And Vitinha went to PSG in the summer, so they were clearly the two outstanding talents. The thing I really like about him is his goal. By all means, you can talk that up because it was a terrific strike. What I really like about him is he's a head-up player. He's very much like Odegaard in that he scans left, right, and behind him before he receives every pass. Always seems to know exactly what he's going to do before the ball even reaches him. And for a guy he's quite slight, he's got that sort of
quite is an understatement.
He's very skinny, isn't he? Very, very wiry, and it reminds me a little bit of when Cesc first came through. In that he doesn't need physical strength because he's so elusive and he moves his body in good positions. But he also strikes me as a guy who can stand up for himself a bit. There's a bit of Reyes in him, I think, where he'll give a bit back. But his overall performance coming in for his debut, replacing Odegaard, is no easy feat given his form. And that goal was a thing of beauty, albeit I think he caught David Raya off guard. But it's nice to see an Arsenal player hit a shot from distance. And it's always nice when it makes that noise as it hits the net as well.
Yeah, I think to start with, I think the one thing I kind of enjoyed with that goal, it was nice to see a player come from the Portuguese league and not get their wings clipped, in the sense of you would watch a compilation of players. I mean, was it Grimaldo in the Champions League only a few weeks ago? Again,
the left back
at Benfica, twats one in for 40 yards, and he'll do it again this season. And he'll score another 2 of those this season. Put him back in Spain at Barcelona, completely different player, not asked to do that. Going, what are you doing? You're turning possession over. But I think there's that kind of freedom that has been given to these kind of players. And I think that was the first thing that, as soon as he hit it and it went in, I was like, great. You can tell just with that small moment in the game that Arteta's kind of keeping him raw, in the sense of, go out there, I'm not going to shape you too much. I'm going to tell you what to do. But at the same time, there's a reason why you weren't a £35 million move to Arsenal. Keep doing what you're doing. And that kind of level of trust. And yeah, some of the passes, even when we saw, the little 10-minute cameos, was it against Zurich? We saw him.
Yeah.
And initially, it's those little cameos there we knew there's something there. And I think there's still going to be a really great player in there. And it's almost a little bit of succession planning and maybe just a case of squad depth. But having so many creative players there and seeing what Vieira can do. I know it's one game in the league, and perhaps I wouldn't put Brentford down there as the most physical team in the league. He's going to have sterner tests. I think he certainly helped that Burnley aren't in the league this season. Let's put it this way. But there's still obviously Everton to come up. So he'll have sterner tests, and we'll see a bit more from him. But yeah, right now, I think it's almost a bit like first season Ozil as well, in terms of how slight he is. I imagine in a couple of, maybe by the end of the season, he might have some definition in his arms.
He'll go to the Eddie Nketiah gym over the summer, and he'll come back like a T1000 for next season. I did enjoy Brentford being described as the B-Tech Stoke when they took long throw-ins towards the end. I quite enjoyed that description. What were you going to say, Danny?
Have you seen his record for the Portuguese under-21s? He's 8 games, 7 goals, 2 assists, captain for the last 3 games, then got injured. Then their next game, they won 9-0. So if he'd have played in that, he probably got even more. But position-wise, I forgot to look at his position. Attacking midfield, the whole thing, his entire career for the under-21s, apart from a couple of games where he's played out wide, has been as an attacking midfielder. And if he's got an eye for goal like that, but it does worry me how much he looks like Teabag from Prison Break. It does worry me. It's very rare now that you'll get an adult who has a goatee, because as we all know, goatees are a thing of the past. And
I don't know what you mean.
No.
Nor does Josh. Yeah. Anyway, speaking of growing up, where do you? I'll ask you both this question, but I'll start with you, Danny, and we're not gonna carp into this. We're just gonna give a brief rundown. Where do you stand on that substitution, Danny? The debut of Ethan Nwaneri.
Ethan to his mates.
Dave came on. Dave Nanwall. Anyway, Nwaneri, we'll go with that. He came on. He got his debut. Youngest Arsenal player in history to debut at that particular age. I believe he's 15. He surpasses Cesk's record when he came on. Game on was that? I'm sure it was Rotherham. Highbury from memory. He had a lovely mullet. It was, but where do you stand? Because some pundits, and I use that term loosely, some uneducated in the media have said it's a really bad thing, and it sets a precedent. And I feel a little bit like it's kind of a bit of the fun police. You're what's that dude called, Josh, that we can't stand, who seems to think he knows it all?
Old hairy hands.
No, the guy who likes cricket on the other podcast.
Oh, James Wilson.
No. It'll come to me. Anyway,
there's too many podcasters I hate as well. It's very.
I think he wrote. Did he write that Inverting the Pyramid book? Is that Jonathan Wilson? Is that
Jonathan
his name?
Wilson? Sorry, not James Wilson.
He's a
striker.
he's a striker. Yeah, Fulham goal, isn't he? But yeah, I do feel like some people just want to watch the world burn, and it's like, well, we have to be miserable about the fact that a player who's still in school, we had to change in separate changing rooms because he's a minor, and all of these things. I didn't take it like that at all. I just looked at it and went, he looks the part. He's a big lad. He's clearly ready. I think it was a little bit maybe of Arteta to sort of go, you're so shit, we can put a 15-year-old on. There was a little bit of that, I thought. But where do you stand on it? Are you in that camp of if you're good enough, you're old enough? Or are you more in the camp of let's keep them in the under-21s until they're actually ready and bring them through then?
Football Manager, I used to do it all the time just to get games under their belt so that I could try and have a play with 1,000 games. Never worked, always ended up being rubbish. It was a little bit moonwalky in front of the Brentford players and fans and manager. Look at us, we're playing children now. I didn't realise that he had to have his own dressing room because he's not an adult, he was underage. So that probably took a little bit off the celebration for him. I think he only touched the ball once, but I was looking at the player who had the record before him was Harvey Elliott, who was at Fulham, then quickly got snapped up by Liverpool, and 5 years later he's only playing a handful of games here and there. So it's I don't think it really matters. There are, if you wanted to be critical, I would say there are other players who have worked their asses off at under 18, 21, 23, and Johnson's Paint Trophy players that would have been more deserving of someone of getting a game, because so many young players will have spent 10 years at Arsenal and then been on the bench a dozen times, and unless we play Olympiacos, they're never going to get a game for us. So it's but I don't care. It doesn't make any difference. It's just Arteta playing games again with people because it's taken the pressure off of the team being top of the league because they're all talking about this instead. I nearly forgot to breathe.
That's a good point, actually. Mr. Boblex asked what we were all doing at 15. All I'm going to say, Mr. Boblex, is I'm just going to say the words fuzzy screen and tissues, and I'm just going to leave it there. Fuzzy screen.
All
10-minute preview. It was.
I thought you were sticking fuzzy felt on yourself.
If you know, you know. Josh, where do you stand on it? I mean, like Danny said there, that there is. We're not suggesting that we've got the new Messi coming straight, and he's not going to walk straight into the first team. We know that he's going to be, he's going to have some time to adjust, and the likelihood is, realistically, the likelihood of his career is going to be that he will maybe get a few more bench appearances, then drift back into the reserves, and we might see him again in, 2 to 3 years' time. What's your sort of point of view? Does it help or hinder a player's development coming through at this age and being given that exposure nationally, so to speak?
I think, to be honest, it depends on how good the player actually is, and I can't say that I've seen anything of him. Probably for partly obvious reasons that not many of us will be watching the under 16s, under 18s, or even under 21s, to have seen him play. But from everything Arteta said, Per said he's ready as well. And I trust, with everything that's happened with our youth department since Per Mertesacker come in, I trust everything that man is doing, more or less, with the club. So if the kid is ready, he is ready. And I don't know, I don't want to necessarily go off, but I think it needs to be said in terms of if the outlets that are being controversial on one side are going to be controversial on the other side. And I don't think it is necessarily controversial, but there's something not quite right with the criticism here. We didn't see this for young white players. When young white players have gone there, when we go through the list of ages and list of players who have hit there, we didn't hear it for Matthew Briggs, and we didn't hear it for Harvey Elliott. We didn't hear it for Cesc Fabregas. James Milner made his debut at 16 for Villa. Didn't hear it for Wayne Rooney. In fact, when Wayne Rooney came on against Arsenal and scored twice on his debut, no one said, don't forget the name David Moyes. They said, don't forget the name Wayne Rooney. It should be all about celebrating the player. There is a kid, English as well, could represent England. It could be our next generational talent who's starting at 15 or coming on at 15 in the Premier League. And the first thing we're doing is jumping down the throat going, you don't deserve to be there. I mean, what the fuck, guys? Seriously. Harvey Elliott, I know he's only made a handful of appearances for Liverpool, but I should put into that, he had an awful leg break at Blackburn. Awful. And that threw his progress right off. But this doesn't seem... something doesn't seem right about the way that... Yeah, I don't mind them going at us for celebrating against, oh, you've got to win against a lower league side and lower division side, and you're celebrating that. Yeah, I don't mind the celebration police, but you're attacking a 15-year-old. Like, what the fuck, guys?
Yeah,
it just doesn't seem.
Would that happen at another club
right.
though? If it was the same player at another club, or is it just because it's ours?
I think the other point that I make would depend on the reaction, to be honest. And I think there is a point. You can see it with Graham Souness and his reactions to Paul Pogba and Marcus Rashford. Those kind of things. There is a certain... I think this is a simple way to put it, rather than trying to beat around the bush, is that certain black players get a rough deal from the media for reasons that can only seem to be because of the colour of their skin. And to me, it seems like if we get, say, another Liverpool go and play and put a white player out who's 15, who comes in at that same kind of level, we get the same outpour. Maybe some might say, oh, it's Liverpool and they've got a bit more backing in there. But if he's white, we're going to see the same thing? No. The manager's going to be lauded. He's going to be lauded for having a player coming through the academy system. It could be the next big thing for England. That's the stuff that we should be talking about. And people going through and going, you know what, we're going to look more back at the academy and start seeing what this kid was doing to deserve that place on the bench. Because I don't think it was tokenistic that he ended up on that pitch. I know we've seen Matt Smith on the bench plenty of times and wondering when he's ever going to get a game. And maybe he is a bit more deserving because he's 4 years older or so. But to be honest, as we've always said, we don't care how old a player is. If they're good enough, they should be in our first team. Yeah. And I think it could be a case with this guy here. And maybe we see him in a Europa League home game. We've got in the middle of October, I keep mentioning how many big games we've got coming off. We've got we've got opportunities for young players, especially in a team that is playing so well. I think that's one thing we talk about the success of Cesc Fabregas, was look at the team that he came into. Look how great that foundation was. And we're getting close to that. Maybe we're not as successful. Well, actually, there's no maybe about it. We're not as successful as that team. that Cesc came into, but we've at least got a decent, solid foundation. Everybody's looking after each other. And that's exactly what we want if we want to be bringing players through the academy. And maybe it's, if anything, it's two fingers up to the players that have been taken out from, we lost a couple of academy players this summer who thought maybe they wouldn't get opportunities in the first team.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Hey, it shows that we've got this plan of bringing players through, and maybe it's telling me I need to watch the Hale End documentary on YouTube because I'll probably see a glimpse of this kid.
I think he's briefly in it. Somebody was saying
I've never heard of him.
I've got a list. No, I freely admit I did chuckle at the amount of people who miraculously had been tracking his progress for the last 4 years online. That always makes me chuckle. When you see that, it's like, oh yeah, I've seen him. I saw him in the playgrounds at Hackney Marsh. No, you didn't. You just didn't. Don't lie. Like, just don't lie. But yeah, but there are some players that people do see at very young ages, and they come through. I personally, I'm kind of on the fence with it. I've got absolutely no issue with the manager blooding young players, and I quite like seeing young players in and around the squad coming on in a game such as that with like 2 minutes to go where the game is won. I don't think it does anybody any harm at all. I love the fact that the players, Martinelli and Xhaka in particular, were sort of pushing him to the fans, and he looked like a very humble lad. That's the sort of thing that he will never forget that moment. And if you said to me, you can pull on an Arsenal shirt to literally run from one side of the pitch to the other at 15, I'd bite your hand off, even if I never played again. And there are many. You could send us a list, Daddy, of the ones who came through the academy and never went anywhere, and their careers ended at God knows where. I was chuckling at, I was watching a brief bit of Middlesbrough against Rotherham the other night, looking at the boy on loan there. What's his name? What's the double barrel? You know the guy. I mean, don't you, Josh? Colwell. What's his name? Oh, I'm getting old.
Norton-Cuffy?
Norton-Cuffy, that's the one. Okay. And interestingly, they're sort of playing him not just as a right back, but more of it in front of the back four. And I tuned in to watch just a bit of him when I was bored of the night, and I noticed that good old Cohen Bramall has pitched up at Rotherham at left back, and he was one that we took a massive gamble on, albeit he was a bit older. I don't think there's any harm in doing it. I would say that there is an argument to say that that's what the under-18s is for. That's what the under-21s is for. But I remember playing Sunday League football and getting my quote-unquote debut in adult football at 14. And I got smashed up in the air by some builder named Phil, like the entire game. He was fucking terrible, by the way. I skinned him every time. That's when I was young and fit and agile. But you know what I mean? It gave me that, Christ, this is quite a lot different to youth level football. And it does blood you, and it does make you realise what you have to do, and sets out that sort of journey that you're on. So if they are good enough, then they absolutely should play. The only thing I would be a bit conscious of is you have to protect the player at that age. You have to be really careful with how you manage the hype around them. And you have to be careful that you don't set them up for a fall, in that they don't have in fact, Loki's just put exactly the player I was thinking of, the Jermaine Pennant effect, where they get too much too soon, or the David Bentley effect, if you will. And before you know it, they're running a bar in Ibiza. So that's the only thing I think you have to be careful of.
Like this was old Zellerlem. And that didn't work.
Yeah, there's another one, yeah. But for every...
I would say what really helps is we've just brought in an under 18s coach, who's probably working with him week in, week out, who can tell him about biding your time. And Jack Wilshere. I think we've got the right... I don't know if it's all the way there, but I think there's enough protection at the club to help these young players through.
And it's a different world, isn't it, as well? And not being harsh on Jermaine Pennant, so he grew up in a different world that we're in now. Nowadays, they're all media trained. They all get sort of training on where to be at what times, or what nightclubs to not go to, and how to manage their social media presence and all these things. It's all done for them now. They're growing up in an era where they will be protected. It's not like the days of Jack and Jermaine where you could just fall out of an East End club at 3 a.m. and be photographed in the paper the next day. So I do get it, and I do think that he will be protected to a certain degree. But for me, I think some of these old men that are moaning and groaning about it are just that. They're dinosaurs, and they don't really need the airtime. So we'll leave them there. just because we've only got the one game to talk about, I do want to do a little bit of general football chat in a second. But just before we do, we should look ahead to what will be the next game after this international break, which is the derby. Danny, first of all, do you have any? I guess where's your head at on this one? Because I feel like we can't win here. Because, well, hopefully we can. But if we win the game, then I feel like there'll be a lot of pressure. I think if we win this game, there will be people who will say, not just Arsenal fans, but the media in general will say, right, we have to be taken seriously as title contenders. We can't really, play it down anymore, however ludicrous that may sound in bloody October. And then if we lose, there will be this once again, oh, they've played somebody decent and it's all gone wrong, etc. and so on. And Spurs the second coming of the Lord himself. Where's your mind at? Are you quite confident going into it, or are you much like me, where it's like it's that game you can never ever enjoy until you've either won it or the game's done?
I usually hate playing those scumbags at the best of times, but when they've added Richarlison, who is the one of the most cuntiest players there are in the Premier League, you've now got 3 diving, cheating, snidey, nasty bastards playing for them, and everybody who's a neutral will hate all 3 of them because they're all scumbags, and that worries me. Plus, you've got their manager who is an old wily fox when it comes to doing these sort of things. But it's 12:30 kickoff at our place. If we get a draw out of it, I'll be happy. We should always want a win, but I hate these games. I used to like them when they were shit, and now you expect Spurs with the players they've got to not be as good as they are, and that's the thing that worries me, because you can see that they're winning games where they're not being very good and they're fluking stuff, and I'm not sure how they're doing that. We are playing the beautiful game. We are playing entertaining, attacking, creative football. Everyone's all together. But then you look at what Spurs are doing. I'm just hoping that a big job's going to come up soon, and then he's going to bugger off and go and manage another team. Because as soon as he leaves that club, he's the most important thing at the club. I mean, we saw last season where Kane had stopped scoring goals. We've seen at the moment where Son hadn't scored anything, and now he's the new messiah because he spanked in 3 fluky goals against the worst team in the Premier League. So hopefully for the international football, so they're going to go away and get injured. They're saying that Lloris might not be playing, but that's just the usual playing games of us. I'm worried about it because they've got what it takes to beat us, and plus VAR has still been shown that it's not good enough. The referees aren't interpreting it properly, and they're just a jammy club. And I'm thinking, I'd like to get this fixture out of the way, but I don't want it to get out of the way at the expense of us getting beaten at home by them scumbags. So, whole load of things I'm thinking about. And it's just I'm looking forward to it, and I'm also dreading it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Where do you stand, Josh? Because I keep seeing a lot of different, not just general football podcasts, but Arsenal podcasts as well, almost grudgingly going, oh yeah, but they are quite good, aren't they? And I just don't see it. I think they're shite. I really do. Like, genuinely. I think they've got they're 3.
Jammy.
Yeah, they are. They've got 3 on their day, very upper average players at best, and they've got some absolutely abysmal players. They've got players that Conte didn't even want there, which is hilarious. And I think they're winging it. And I genuinely think people have been banging on to us about, oh, you haven't really played anybody. I think they played Man City, haven't they? Other than that, look at their fixtures. I don't think they particularly played, any huge fixtures either. And I'm just not impressed with them. So I'd really, really like to shut them up. Where do you stand on this in this particular game?
Yeah, I mean, are they going to have a manager by the point of this game? Just going to throw that one out there.
Are we talking about Juventus here, or
maybe? I may secretly follow some Spurs fans and or some Spurs titles just to see what's going on the other side of the fence. And,
they worry, don't they?
Let's just say, there's it's either Conte or his agent is putting feelers out there, should we say?
He only signed an 18-month deal. So the compensation isn't even going to be that much.
Well, he was going to walk in the summer until they gave him the players he asked for, wasn't he? He was gone, basically. So, yeah.
And I mean, how many of those players are on loan from Juventus so he can just recall them when he gets over there in Turin? Sorry. But yeah, I think there's I would have to say they have been lucky. I think we've been lucky in some places, but I haven't seen them. I haven't seen them blow away a team like we did with Brentford. And before anybody goes and talks about Leicester, that team might as well be made of 11 chocolate teapots at the moment. I am not taking any credit from Son coming on in half an hour, scoring a hat-trick against them, because you know who their goalkeeper is? Danny Ward.
He's so bad, isn't he?
You thought if anybody has not seen Leicester play this season, imagine Runnison, but he's just been hit by a bus. Not in the recovery stages, literally just then been hit by a bus. And he's
the Wales number one, though, isn't he?
I thought Wayne Hennessy was. Wasn't
it might be Wayne Hennessy. It depends if he's still reading up about the Nazis. But he is a terrible goalkeeper. I saw him at Brighton.
22 goals they've let in 7 games.
Oh, and he has probably been at fault for at least 23 of those goals. He's that bad. He's that bad. He's already conceded a goal. They might as well start 1-0 down. He's that bad. They're in a difficult place. So I'm not going to give them too much credit for that 6-2 win, coming back from behind as well. You concede against that Leicester side as well. That's a big issue.
And they could have lost that game, couldn't they? That's the other thing. I actually thought going forward, I thought James Maddison, I know he gets a lot of, I know he's a bit of a divisive figure, but he's a power of a player to watch when when he's in form. His interview afterwards, I thought, was actually very honest, and he was like, "Well, to be honest, I didn't actually think we played didn't think we played badly. They had a lot of chances, and they had a good chance to get back level. I think when they were 2-1 down, was it? Was 2-1 down? So I mean, on another day, if they take their chances, they could be 2-3-2 up at that point, and Spurs don't come away with anything. I just, even like you said, you follow Spurs fans. I can't sully my timeline. I think I've got 2. And that's only because they have podcasts and they just happen to be Spurs fans. But so I'm always a bit careful what I tweet, so I don't want to upset anybody. No, I'm not. But even they are sort of saying, we're quite good, but we're not. Just go and look at the timeline after that Sporting Lisbon game. There's a lot of Spurs fans that are not happy with the way they're playing, and they don't believe in what's going on. So make of that what you will. And as for this, everyone's got to love Son again. Oh, it makes me fucking sick.
I think it's a big thing. Like the last 2 North London derbies we've played, maybe not the Nuno one actually, but the one the season before as well. All the Arteta North London derbies have all seemed to be about if we turn up and we do what we know we can do, 3 points is there for us, irrespective. I think there's definitely option for us. It's that kind of annoyance of we all know that form goes out the window, and I hate using that cliche, but it is kind of that logic just does disappear when it comes around to North London Derby Day, and I still back us for it because of everything I've said. We managed to nullify an incredibly organised counter-attacking team in Brentford. We were, one thing that was interesting actually hearing the commentators in that game talking about how against Man United that maybe we jumped the shark a little bit with our substitutions, but generally that performance was not a 3-1 loss performance. No. There was lots of positives there. So I think there is that we can do well against a counter-attacking side. And if Mbappe can if Saliba can deal with Mbappe, I'm sure he can deal with Son and Kane. The player
forward to...
The one
I'm quite looking forward to seeing that moment of like Saliba standing over Harry Kane, like that famous image of, was it Mertesacker standing
Socrates?
over Socrates as well, of course. Yeah.
It's that kind of one. The one player that it's annoying because he is just now tainted with Spurs now that he's signed for them permanently. But Kulusevski, that's the player that can change it for them. But I mean, hopefully Katie and Zinchenko make it through their game and don't kick each other up in the air as they're playing at the moment. But I think a solid left back and that will be fine for the game.
Yeah.
How many games recently have you watched, like the Brentford one, and gone, there's not a single thing to moan about that we did. We didn't have one bit of bad play. You didn't look at any player and go, oh, for God's sake, why have you done that, you moron? Nothing. Just almost a perfect game.
Not only that, but the comfort element as well. I was chatting to Steph about it the other day, and she agreed with me, and we were discussing the thought process of how many games have we played, not just in the last season, but the last sort of 3, 4, 5 years, where you'd even go 1-0 up and go, oh yeah, but it's Arsenal, we're going to do something Arsenal-y, and it'll all end in Arsenalness, and oh God, like, you know, you genuinely panicked every time a team attacked you. There was at no point, even at 0-0, at no point in that Brentford game did I sit there and think, well, we're not winning this game. I was always confident that we would win the game. And at 1-0 up, I didn't sit there thinking, oh God, but what if? And even in that Man United defeat, at no point did I ever sit there and think, oh God, we're under the cosh here, and yet we lost the game 3-1. So I think there is an element of control in this team, it seems, anyway, to me.
Yeah, when I spoke to people who aren't Arsenal fans, and we spoke about the game, I said, wasn't it a boring game if you're a neutral? Yeah. Because there was no jeopardy in it. Like as soon as it went 2-0 up, that was it. You just knew that was kind of done. And it's not something you've seen a team do. It's probably when we were talking about, you know, Pep's Man City, you know, when they'd have those games, you're like, oh, so boring to watch as a neutral, because they just sit in second gear and they churn out a 2-0, and you're like, great, that's 90 minutes of my life I'm never going to get back. Yeah, there was some nice interplay, but yeah, it felt like that. But from a perspective of we're actually supporting the team that's doing that.
Like a relentless machine, not non-stop. Yeah, I agree. I'm tentative about the game, but I'm also fairly confident, and I have a really annoying buzz in my speakers, which I need to sort out in a second. Just one other thing, just before we take some questions, I just wanted to get both of your opinions or thoughts on what's going on in Spain this week, because there's a lot going on we saw Gabriel Jesus' celebration in sort of support for his colleague in Vinicius Jr. And most people will know what's going on, but for those who don't, he's obviously Brazilian. Most of his goals that he scores involve dancing, a sort of samba style. So it's an expression thing. And he does have that sort of Neymar quality about him, where he likes to take the piss a bit. You know, he likes to sort of display his skills, shall we say, and can be a bit provocative. There was this kind of misquote, I guess, on El Chiringuito, where the pundit, I think it was a former agent, was sort of saying, you know, he shouldn't play the monkey. And this argument was that he was not calling him a monkey. He was saying, there's a saying, you know, don't play the monkey, which I have heard the phrase myself. It is a phrase, maybe caught in translation. But there's a big suggestion that there's a very big racism problem in Spain, particularly with Atletico Madrid fans. Whether that's fair or not, I don't know. I'm not well versed in that, but I just want to get both of your thoughts on it. Like, Josh, do you feel like this is something that we have had it in the UK, haven't we? We had the Sterling thing at Chelsea. We've had the Aubameyang banana peel thing. I guess the question I would ask you is there there's no place for racism? We know that's not even up for debate. But do you think that the original point was lost in translation here before it got to this horrid abuse that he's taken, in that players have a responsibility of how they conduct themselves on the pitch? And just to be completely crystal clear here, I am not saying that if you do a rainbow flick, you deserve racism. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that has this argument almost been lost because it's now gone to a race issue, which we know clearly is wrong?
I don't know. I can't say that however the phrase is phrased in Spanish. I'm presuming he said it in Spanish, how that may have been picked up. Yeah, I don't know in terms of if you said, monkeying around as a turn of phrase in English, how that would be perceived. So I can't necessarily jump on that. What certainly doesn't help is Atletico Madrid fans turning up with monkeys in the in Real Madrid kits. That probably doesn't help support any shaky ground the agent was already on.
As if you weren't sure.
As if you weren't sure. That was more or less confirmed, or didn't help any argument that the guy was trying to have, that what he was saying was not in any way had any racist connotations behind it. But yeah, there's other ways of saying what he was trying to say. Stop messing around, basically. Be more mature. There's other ways of saying what he wanted to say rather than necessarily using that turn of phrase. And I can't say because I am not in the right position to have taken any offense if someone said that to me. But then, it's difficult for me to really talk about. So I would say that, as I kind of said, the point that however anyone took it, some people clearly pushed it in a racist way when they turned up. And I think there was at some point someone was looking for sympathy for Atletico fans who were beaten up for turning up with monkeys in Real Madrid jerseys for their I should say they weren't actual monkeys, they were stuffed monkeys, as in stuffed toy monkeys, again, not dead monkeys that have been stuffed.
What world we live in, I have to keep re-clarifying it.
Well, I have to re-clarify what kind of... Someone took a stuffed toy, it was a monkey, and it was
they killed a monkey and stuffed it, bastards!
and they got beaten up for it, rightly so. So yeah, I think it's one of those that some people will take any phrase and run with it in the direction they want to run with it.
I do agree, and I appreciate I've sort of sprung it on you. I was just curious, and I guess the other, maybe a slightly different line of subject, but on the same lines, Danny, is when you talk about how the world is. Obviously, it's a different place now. You know, you can't say certain things, you can't do certain things in any context now without offending somebody. That's just how it is. I saw now, and I tweeted about this. I've got absolutely no shame in saying I find this new thing that Sky are pushing, which again, nothing to do with racism. This is more to do with sort of freedom of speech, I suppose. But you can't say man of the match anymore. It's player of the game. Not in my fucking house, it isn't. Absolute bullshit. Like I cannot understand. And you talk to people who follow the women's game or women who play the women's game. None of them have an issue with this. When did this come about? Like we live in this world now where, people have to be so careful about everything they say. And I saw that genuinely, it passed me by. And all the pundits are saying, player of the game, and it's all because of the Soares stuff that happened a few weeks ago about man's game, etc. Like, it's quite sad, isn't it? That you have to be, it's almost at the point like where you can't celebrate a goal before VAR has come in. You now have to, it's almost, I find myself sometimes I'll be writing a tweet about a live game and giving an opinion on a player and thinking, I'm going to quickly read that back and make sure I haven't said anything. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's nuts, isn't it? And I don't know, did you even know about this man of the match thing? Did you hear about this?
Oh, only because our Nick was talking about it in the group, and it's just like everything else in life. It's like someone said something about ginger people, and then Josh going, huh. But then someone who isn't ginger will go, oh, I find that extremely offensive, or people sticking up for people in chairs and going, well, I think that's no. How about you shut the fuck up? If I've got a problem with it, I will let them know. And as for the Atletico Madrid thing, we're talking about a country that thinks bullfighting is okay. That's all I've got to say on that. If they think in putting not dead monkeys in shirts is the biggest problem in that country, then no. Have a look at bullfighting, you horrendous, evil bastards. But there's remember when Venezuelan John did a pod with us? He said, "Are Spanish people? Do we call them Hispanic? That we don't, do we? Because that is South Americans." But I remember when he was talking about Hispanic people, and he was some of the things that he was saying about the old when old Bitey Bollocks was being racist. He said that one of his nans is black and one of them isn't, and the word that he calls his nan, if you use that word here, you'd be shut down. But he said that's what we all call her. That's what we call people of that shading. And he said you can't look through the Hispanic people and the way they do stuff with European eyes. I think it was something like that. Is you can't do that. It's a completely different culture, and I don't know if a certain percentage of that is the same with looking at Spanish people and the way they do stuff. But with your other point, it's just people looking. I mean, I know some of Sean's friends have now gone into advertising, and these people, I wouldn't let them open a tin of beans. They've been looking, I've got an idea. Oh, please, sir, I've got an idea. How about snails should have dog leads and stop them pooing on people's gardens? And they go, oh, well, that's a good idea. Yeah, people who own snails, they'd agree with that. And you're going, fucking hell. How about there's more important things in the world to worry about than whether you're going to call someone man of the match or call it woman of the match. But I think they should be calling it woman of the match, not man of the match. But again, I don't care. It's not me.
Well,
I would say I'm glad we spent 5 minutes discussing that as well. Something that we really shouldn't spend 5 minutes talking about. From my perspective, I don't care.
Somebody told me that apparently the reason they can't say man of the match is because of the sort of the what's the word, but a non-binary sort of thing. So in other words, if
another fucking pot.
Let's not go there. But let's say, for example, Bukayo Saka scores the winner and then comes out after the game and says, well, actually it's Christina Saka now, so you'll address me as I should. Well, then he can't play for Arsenal men's team. So the whole fucking argument's stupid anyway, isn't it? Because if somebody does identify as a female, they couldn't play in the men's Premier League team anyway. Am I right?
Give it time.
Well, I mean, yeah, and that may well happen someday. And I'm not saying that I'm against it, but the rules now are it's men's and women's.
I would say it does align with Manager of the Month, using the title of the person rather than being Man of the Month. Man of the Month. We don't do Man of the Month.
Man of the Month.
We don't do Man of the Month.
That's in FHM, isn't it? Is that
yeah,
kind of thing?
I think that's very different. But anyway, it's now Manager of the Month and Player or Manager of the Match. We could have that. I feel like I prefer my conspiracy theory of why they changed it from Man of the Match to Player of the Match, and that's because Mike Dean and co spent most of the games trying to win that award and were getting annoyed they were never up for the actual award. So they had to change it because they're all thick as pig shit. And they had to change it to Player. So the referees really, really understood they couldn't win that award and stopped trying to win games for other teams.
It's a batshit world we live in, isn't it? And when we live in a world where Ezra Miller can identify as a unicorn, I mean,
now that is one I'd give that a go.
Well, there you go.
Do you get free raindrops?
And by the way, he is batshit crazy. Let's move on.
He's done the Flash film.
He won't be doing any more films based upon his recent. I shouldn't laugh.
He's having a right old time of it.
he is a scumbag. Anyway, that's enough of him. But no, I just and just for the record, to draw a line under it. If Vinicius Junior wants to dance, I say fucking fair play to him. Like, if you. The game is about moments, it's about enjoyment, it's about fun, it's about having that ability to showcase your talents. And don't get me wrong, for all the people that Neymar rubs up the wrong way, and he does, he's a beautiful footballer to watch when he's in his pomp, and it's the same with Vinicius and any of the Brazilian players. Personally, if I was a right back and somebody did a rainbow flick over me, I'd put them in the fucking edge because I can't stand it. But that doesn't mean
if you could get close to them, you could get close to them.
Exactly.
And as somebody who enjoys watching Samba football, I want to see players taking the piss out of other players who aren't good enough. There's not enough Neymars in this world.
There you go. And that's the beauty of the world we live in, isn't it? Everyone can have that sort of opinion on how they want the game to be played. And that's just the old man in me coming out. And as you rightly say, I would, it's just because I'm not very good. Mm-hmm. But no, we as a podcast stand with you, Vinny. If you want to dance, my friend, you dance. And I think the only thing that was a shame was that he didn't score in that game. So he could have like fully windmilled around the pitch, couldn't he? Just giving it beans. Like, that would have been brilliant. But anywho. Right, let's take a couple of questions that will probably be more Arsenal related. Danny, do we have a couple?
We have. I'll read this one because it is from Josh Robinson. Josh Robinson, 87 on Twitter. Who's your back four for the Spurs game?
Same as it was the other day.
Think so.
I think. Yeah. I guess the only argument is if Zinchenko's fit, do you bring him in over Kieran Tierney? But I don't think you do right now.
No,
based on what we've seen of Arteta and loyalty, and if you've got the shirt, you earn it, etc. And this is assuming we get no more injuries during the international break, where about 20 of our players will probably come back with limbs missing and God knows what else. So
I think it's about the game, isn't it? You want a relentless left back for the first 60 minutes, and then you want a bit of control and discipline for the remaining 30. If we're in a position where we've got a lead and we need to hold on to it.
I think as long as Tierney is doing what he's been doing when he's come into the side this year and not bombed on too much, I don't really see it being a problem. I don't see any reason to not have Ben White as the fullback again. I think he's done a fine job in that position. The centre backs, for me, you leave them exactly as they are because they're absolutely fine. Goalkeeper picks himself, so yeah, I personally wouldn't change it. I think that game's going to be won and lost in midfield anyway. So, I don't think you change it. I think the only thing you could maybe do is you could maybe bring, if Odegaard is still not fit, you could argue that you could bring in Zinchenko into a sort of a more defensive midfield and not play with a 10, maybe. You could bring him in, to sit with Partey and Xhaka and not have a 10. But I don't. We're at home, the onus is on us to take the game to them. So I'd keep it as it is, personally.
Okay, next question. This is from, I'm going to have a go at your first name, Tejazwi. There's a few silent letters in there, I bet. Guys, Arteta made a very important point against United loss. He said we needed to be braver. Lesser teams can be beaten with our skill and organisation. The derby will demand relentlessness, though. Your thoughts, Josh?
Yeah, I agree in terms of what I was just saying about our left backs as well. That we've got players who can do different things in terms of how we want to play the game. What I don't want us to do, though, is be so relentless it kind of goes into that bit of chaos where we lose control of the game, which can happen. There's managers that build entire philosophies on making sure the game is so unstable that they can capitalize in that point because both teams just lose all of their shape. I think that's where I want to make sure that we have got a little bit more control to it. And I think in terms of being braver, I think that's making sure that a bit of saying that we take the opportunities when they come and always trust that the next chance will present itself. A bit like Vieira as well with his goal. As I was saying, you can see that there's players that are taking opportunities when the opportunity presents itself, even at a half chance. They're going to have a go and they back themselves to knock it into the corner. And I think that's the thing for us is we've got some great players and hopefully we put in such a performance that any good will that Eric Dyer has got from this international break being back in the England setup is completely ruined and he doesn't go to the World Cup because I would like England to do quite well there, which won't happen if Eric Dyer's in the midfield or defence.
I wouldn't like England to do very well. Fuck England. Sorry, what? What? Sorry? I don't know, Danny. I wish England all the best. God bless them and their cardboard cutout manager. Yes. I've had nothing to add to that, by the way. I know the question's for Josh, so continue, Danny, continue.
Right, next question is going to be, get rid of that one, from Gary. Will Brazil have 0, 1, 2 or 3 Arsenal players with them in November? If so, who, Chris?
I don't know if Gary's new, by the way.
Josh is saying 3 for people at home and on the bus.
Yeah, I don't know if Gary's new. I haven't seen Gary in the chat before, so if you are new, Gary, welcome. We'll look after you.
Gary's done shows with us.
Oh, was he? Oh, I just didn't recognise the name or the DWTT, so apologies, Gary.
Don't waste the tweet is what that stands for.
Clever. Well, anyway.
He's one of our American listeners. Got his own YouTube channel and he's a very nice man.
Well, good evening to you, Gary. I apologise, sir. I apologise. But to answer your question, I'm with Josh actually on this one. I think all 3 will go. What I will say is if Martinelli doesn't go and that fraud Anthony does, I'll eat my hat because man's a dog. I think Gabriel Jesus is a lock. I feel like Gabriel Magalhaes will be. Well, I mean, he is one of the better defenders they've got. I don't think there'll be an issue with him. This is all assuming they'll be fit, of course. I think the only one there is a doubt over is Martinelli, and I guess it just depends on what forwards Brazil take, because they've got quite a lot of wide forwards, haven't they? They haven't got too many centre forwards, and even Neymar's playing as the false nine with them. I don't think Firmino will go, which I think will help Martinelli. But it sounds like they're going to take three of Richarlison, the fraud, Anthony, Rodrigo at Real Madrid, or Martinelli, because it seems a lock that who's the other one I'm trying to think of? Oh, Rafinha. He will go. So, yeah, I think we'll see three, and I'd be really gutted if Martinelli didn't go, because I think low key he's actually been probably our best player this season. I think he's been so good. I love him to bits.
Yeah, Josh, do you want to have a quick thing on that? Because you were waving your hand in the air like you just don't care.
Yeah, they're all going. There was a very good reason, if anybody does some research, which I've already had a go at a lot of mainstream pundits, of why our three Brazilians have not gone. And that is because the manager of Brazil already knows that they are going to the World Cup. He is experimenting in this thing to work out if there's any other players who will make the squad. He already knows what he's getting with the three Gabriels. So yeah, I'm expecting them to be there, and probably expecting Gabriel to line up with Eder Militao in defence. And then, yeah, Martinelli will be there. He may not start for them, but he'll be in that squad.
What a player to have come off the bench if needed.
There's a centre forward, isn't there, who plays for, I want to say Flamengo, I could be wrong, but or is it Palmeiras? There's a guy who's still playing in Brazil. I'm sure it's the guy who used to play in Italy.
Oh, Gabriel. Gabigol. Not Gabigol.
No, not Gabriel. No, I think it's João Pedro. I'm sure he was at Fiorentina or Cagliari or something like that.
João Pedro got into Brazil. He got into the early
that's it.
Brazil squads last season.
That's the guy. So I wonder
the one who's about 40, isn't he? He's not 40. He's about 28, but he's
mid-20s. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's talk of him going as the other centre forward. But they seem to play Neymar as the false nine with two wide, very pushed on forwards. So like you said, I don't think Martinelli would start. And the irony of that would be that Jesus will probably end up playing wide if indeed he starts. But yeah, I hope they all go, because it'll give them a massive boost coming back as well. So yeah, and am I right in saying that there's talk that they're going to take? I think they're even still considering Dani Alves as one of their defensive options, because they haven't got any fullbacks.
Is he in Mexico now?
They've only got
playing really badly as well.
They've only got Danilo, haven't they, as a right back?
The Juve, yeah, and they've got
it's Lodi and Tellez.
Yeah,
on the other side.
Yeah,
you've always got the Man United twins that played fullbacks that are Brazilian.
Raphael,
are they still in France? Are they all still in France? Those two.
One is, yeah. Raphael's still at Nantes. He got sent off a few weeks ago. Is it Raphael or
is the other one at Cardiff or something?
One of them was at Cardiff.
He was in the lower league. Hang on, what were they called? Raphael and what was the other one called?
Donatello.
Fabio. Yeah. Which one is it? Nantes. God, that's thrown me. I think it's Raphael.
Be careful saying that team around, saying that team name. Otherwise, everyone will think that they don't sweat in a Pizza Express.
Good evening, Your Majesty. Yeah, I think it's Fabio who's still at Nantes. I'm having to check. Yes, it is. It is Fabio. Sorry. So Raphael. I don't know where Raphael is. I don't really care, to be honest. But yeah, he is still at Nantes. And yeah, Danilo, who is Oleksandr still knocking around at Juventus as well?
Yeah, he's left back, isn't he?
Yeah. And I saw recently in the press Marcelo was going to Olympiacos. Yeah, he's not going to get back in. They'll end up with David Luiz at centre back alongside Duda and Jarzinho and probably Cafu, and it will all be fine. But yeah, in attack they're pretty bloody good, aren't they? To be fair. Anywho, any other questions, Danny?
Yeah.
Went on a Brazilian tangent there. Yeah.
Right, a quick question on. I want a rating out of 10 and a one-word answer. Start with you, Chris. From Arnie Arneson I think he's in Iceland. I'm sure he is. My mum went to Iceland.
What should you bring back?
Chalk ices.
The cold.
What do you think of England's first kit? He says kit. I'm sure he means kit.
I actually don't mind it, to be fair. I think the away kit's hideous. I think the away kit's hideous. Why have they put a light blue badge on a red kit? It looks stupid. But no, I quite like the home kit, to be fair. Team shit, but yeah, the kit's all right.
Give it a rating out of 10?
It's a solid 7. It's not like, and it's because imagine being a Leeds fan. Oh, what's our new home kit like, lads? It's white. White? Oh, cool. Great.
It's like the last one.
Every year, it's just what we got to work.
Well, Leeds used to be blue and yellow, didn't it? Until they played Real Madrid, and then they changed it to white.
True that. But yeah, no, I think the thing I hate about all of the night kits, including the France one, is this stupid sort of semicircle thing they've got going around. I don't like that at all. I think that looks really shite. And for the record, I think the France away kit's far better than the home one, so I'm not completely biased. But no, I'd say it's a solid 7 out of 10. The Puma kits, by the way, are hideous. God.
Yeah, I'm not too bothered by it. I know RLS.
Are you going to buy it?
Livid, no. I will continue. England have already peaked with the best kit that they made, and it was one of the Lioness kits from about 4 seasons ago. So yeah, there's no beating that kit. It is, as Mr. Bob Lex puts, it is a little bit Spurs training kit, but it is a Nike template. They all look like Spurs training kits.
The women's kits were really nice, weren't they? The Euros, the France one was amazing. They were because they were extra spicy. They had like special designs and stuff, didn't they? And I quite like them. But
I'm assuming they're only doing a limited run on the France World Cup kits because they probably will get there and leave very quickly once they all fall out with each other.
Actually, it is probably going to go that way. To be fair,
I know there was no joking about that. It is literally happening. They've started especially early this year.
Us France fans have some concerns over this World Cup. I think it's fair to say. And I was going to say on kits. Something I was going to say on kits.
Have you seen the Holland one where it's orange? Everything's orange.
Everything's orange.
Hell.
You got
meningitis wearing that kit.
The kits templates this year, they are a bit out there. Some of them, like I say, these Puma ones where they've got this massive kind of thing with the number sits in. It's like a big crest around the number. Oh, it looks so bad. Like they're really.
I suppose they can't be too flamboyant in case the Qataris get the wrong idea and throw you in jail.
That's also true. That's what I was going to say. I know our Jeff, Evening Jeff, is very disappointed, as are a lot of Canadians, in the fact that they've just got a re-release of their standard team wear template. First World Cup in, was it 36 years for Canada? And they've just been given the bog standard team wear kits with the Canadian crest on, which is a bit sad. So, yeah, sad times. But anyway, in literally 2 months from now, we'll be in the middle of a World Cup, which is a bit weird, isn't it? Don't know how I feel about that.
As sure as eggs are eggs, that the best kits are going to be African because they embrace the kits and what people want and being a little bit flamboyant. They're not going to go, okay, it's going to be one colour. No, they're going to go, let's go crazy. They're all going to be, they're going to be magnificent.
The Belgian one's quite fun. It's got like fire down the sleeves, and the Argentine away purple one is a bit special as well. So, anyway.
Next question for you, Chris. While our Jeff is in the top right corner looking at you befuddled, I haven't sent him a message in ages. Is he all right?
Yeah, I literally messaged him 2 minutes ago.
I'll piss off. I'm going to send him a 10-minute WhatsApp message. Ron Reed says, what position? Thank you. Player should we be our next signing, Josh? Should we worry that we may stop a certain young player's development if we make a big signing?
What position is? I think the obvious one is the one that's being currently held by one of the oldest players in the squad. I think there's 2 opportunities actually now thinking about it, and they're both in central midfield. It depends on, I think, how Sambi comes along this season for whether or not he cements himself as an 8 or a 6. I think obviously an injury has led to him being going back to a 6, although we spent the entirety of pre-season playing him further up the field. But basically, the short answer is whichever position Sambi doesn't take, we need to get someone else to cover the other position. So that's either an upgrade to Xhaka or Partey.
Chris, do you care about this? Of course you do.
Yeah, I care, but I think Josh is spot on that centre midfield area. I was going to say David Luiz then. What's the Villa guy called? Douglas Luiz. Thank you. The Douglas Luiz position. I still got a sneaking suspicion the Tielemans thing might get resurrected in January. I saw he came out the other day and said he has no regrets over not leaving, and I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, I think you might be telling a few porkies there. But
yeah, I think Leicester might need that £10 million so they can fire Brendan.
Yeah, and get a goalkeeper potentially or 3. But I think the holding midfield position is still an area. And controversial opinion, I still think we're a centre forward short. I think Balogun will come back a better player next season. He's had a really good start in France at Reims and is doing a good job there. But I do feel like we should still be looking at somebody to come in as a backup forward, particularly after, people are talking about this sort of how the squad's settled now. After this World Cup, we have to remember players are going to have burnout, and it only takes Jesus to get clattered at the World Cup, or even the mental aspect. If Brazil have a shocker, like Jesus had a really tough World Cup last time when Brazil were out there, and it really knocked his confidence when he came back. And World Cups can make and break players' form. We've seen it so many times in the past where big nations have bad World Cups and their players come back just not quite at the level. So that will require our board to be across it, and you'd imagine they're already putting feelers out there for players that we could be looking at. But yeah, you can't have a squad of 40. You've got to be realistic. But I do think a midfielder and potentially a forward would still be on the options books if we can get them.
Okie dokie. Next question is going to be for you, Josh, from Arnie Arneson again. Question: if we buy a 15-year-old boy was man of the match, would it be kid of the match?
Be player of the match. Easy peasy.
Okay, you've ruined that one.
It would be youth of the match, wouldn't it? Youth of the match.
Probably. Could be. Chris, one from Tom Andrew. I think he said he's in Seattle. I don't like Seattle. Fishwives. I'm a Portland fan. That's not helped the situation. He's brand new to the show, and I'm really disrespecting
and he's just left.
Seattle Sounder Fishwives. From Tom Andrew says, in addition to Nwaneri's question, should the next signing be a marquee player? Because I suppose you can. Jesus was definitely a marquee player, wasn't he? But he's our first one we've had since Partey. Yeah. I don't.
In addition to shouldn't. No, I don't think so. Depends what you class as a marquee player, I suppose. But I don't, because I feel like we're already in a situation where, like Josh alluded to earlier on, we're leaving out Tomiyasu, we're leaving out one of Zinchenko or Tierney, we're potentially going to leave out Fabio Vieira when Odegaard's fit. Eddie Nketiah signed a new deal and he's only playing when Jesus is rested or in Europe. So. Yeah, I don't really think we should. The only caveat to that is if you're bringing in a player who walks into, if a player, an opportunity, as Arsene Wenger used to say, comes up to sign a world-class talent that you can get ahead of anybody else, then naturally you have to go and do it. I don't want to go too deep into my French connections here, but have a look at, when you get 5 minutes, have a look at the amount of players PSG have got available in their midfield now. They've literally got 8 midfielders that would walk into pretty much any team in Europe. How the hell they're going to keep all those players happy is anyone's guess. So that there isn't a limit to what talent you have, but keeping them all happy is a bit difficult. So yeah, unless you're met with an opportunity to sign a top quality player, a terrific player, as Harry would say, I don't think you do. I think you shop in that market of the Tielemans, of the Douglas Luizes, where they do improve your squad. They do add genuine competition, but they don't walk in with a massive ego, with a massive transfer fee and maybe a purple dildo in the reporter's ear at the time.
Okay, next question is from Femi. Chris, why on earth is going... What? I think it says, what on earth is going on in France with all these red cards? Prem has 4, France has over 50. Is that right?
Not quite that many, 34 since the start of the season.
Unlike Femi to exaggerate at your expense.
But he has got a point. There's a big hoo-ha going on in France. People will probably have heard that Jean-Claude Todibo, formerly of Barcelona and Toulouse fame, and now playing at Nice, was sent off within 9 seconds at the weekend. Harshly, it has to be said. Also, Loco at Rams was sent off against, I think it was, who was it against? I can't remember who they're playing now, but he was sent off as well for basically passing the ball. It's bizarre. He kind of runs his foot over the ball, and the referee deems it as unsporting conduct. And oh my god, it was ridiculous. But yeah, there is a big thing in France at the moment about why are they having so much attention on the referee's decisions. There is a suggestion that France knows something that other leagues don't, and that refereeing is going to change, and they're getting player or clubs used to the fact that this is how it's going to be. I'm not sure I buy into that, to be honest. I just think that some of the standard of refereeing in France is not the best, and the VAR use is bordering on ridiculous at times. Some of the penalties that have or haven't been given this season are scandalous. So it's a bit weird. But then I also think it's very weird that the Premier League's only had 4 red cards, because I think there probably could have been quite a few more if we're realistic.
That's because Xhaka's not tackling anymore.
I was just going to say a good thing for Granit, but yeah, it's very odd. It is very, very strange what's going on at the moment. Okay,
right. Arnie's already asked a couple more questions, but we can't be here all night, so we already answered one for you, Arnie. I think we might have done 2 for Arnie. So there you go, Chris. I think that's all the questions done. We've been going an hour and 36 minutes, which is 36 more than you always say.
Yes, absolutely. I've got some modding to do for some Twitch people. So
modelling,
modding, not modelling.
Look for you're going to get your sexy pants on. You're going to get on those silk sheets and get people to paint you.
My disco pants. But yes, we will draw it to a close there. Upcoming shows, I presume you. Well, I mean, do you want to tell our listeners what you want to do at some point, Danny? You've got an idea for the interlull that you wanted.
I was going to say that I thought that was this show. That's the only reason I said yes.
It's a good job you didn't think it was until now, because you'd have been like, what have we just talked about for an hour and a half?
Well, we all know an all-star game is never going to happen because it's a stupid idea. But I thought it'd be good for now that we've got bugger all to do for the next 6 weeks until football comes back. Then we get 4, 5, or 6 of us to all do an all-star. We pick our all-star team. You can only have one player from any team, and then we all take it in turns. And so we'll have you have to have 11 different players from 11 different Premier League clubs, but you all take it in turns to pick a player. And so I'm not sure how we're going to pick who goes first. Probably maybe some random number generator, and then we'll all assign ourselves a number and then go from there. But I'd like to get some of the people in that haven't really seen much of this season because they've got kids, like Femi has been on holiday, Rich has been on holiday, James has been on holiday, Chris has not left his room for 6 months. I've not left the house properly since bloody June. So it'd be nice to get 5. I think you can have more people on there. Maybe have 5 or 6 people. It'd be a bit of a laugh. So I don't know who's going to do it or when, but maybe next week we'll try and arrange something. And that would be good. I should really do a loan update as well because I've not done one of those. Well, we've got 24 players out on loan. Wow.
Patino scored at the weekend.
Who did?
Yeah.
Patino.
Yeah.
Oh, Jazz to his mates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be good. So other than that, I mean, we've usually got the Sunday roast. We didn't do one this Sunday because Mike had a jiffy belly because he eats everything he sees. So you probably eat some gravel and some dog poo and some leaves or something. But other than that, unless you're not going to come up with ideas for show, we're quite Spartan with shows for the next 2 weeks.
No, well, we'll do that. I think it's because the Spurs game is Saturday week, isn't it? So we've got basically 10 days to fudge something together. So we'll sort something out. We'll stay tuned. We'll be back, and obviously looking ahead to that, Danny, you'll do a preview show, I presume, with some unsuspecting fellow or fellowette before the Spurs game. So we will do that.
I'm not sure whether to do them an hour and a half before kickoff or whether we do them the day before. But I think as this is a 12:30 kickoff, I'll be doing it the day before because I'm not going to get up that early. Now I've got my IPTV to work on my Fire Stick, so I'm just lounging in bed at 40 degrees under my duvet.
Splendid business. Good stuff. Okay, cool. Well, that is that for this. Cheap plug, if you like French football, and who doesn't, go and listen to my other podcast, You Fucks. No, in all seriousness, if you do like football across the channel, I do host another podcast, so I'm just going to plug it because why not? French Football Weekly. I do once a week with my colleagues over there. So we just recorded an episode yesterday about last weekend's game. So if that interests you, go and have a little look. If it doesn't, no worries. Big shout out to the Liverpool fan who popped into the chat earlier on. I'm sure he'll go quiet when Liverpool don't win anything for the next 33 years. And then I'm sure they'll win something and he'll come crawling out again. But good luck to him. Yeah, thank you all very much for joining us. Those of you in the live chat, and of course those of you that pop into our Twitch channel as well, which we are on twitch.tv/Bergkamp Wonderland, I think I'm right in saying, and the YouTube channel, of course. If you are watching, and we're available on all the usual platforms to download and listen as well. And if you are listening to us and you haven't already, give us a subscribe, a follow, a thumbs up, all of that jazz, because we do appreciate it. And it does get us extra views and all that stuff. So no money to be made here.
Show.
Say again? Yes.
You link to your show.
There you go. So yeah, if you like it, go for it. If you don't, no worries. But yes, thank you very, very much for joining us. Much appreciated. Some of the regulars and a couple of new names in there as well. But thank you as always. Josh, thank you very much, sir, for coming on board.
That's been great. It wasn't the show I was expecting, but it was a show nevertheless. And I would say to anyone in the chat box, if they would like to put their nominations for podcast for the show, we'll be doing the award after the show backstage. And there'll be a glass of bubbly going around to whoever wins that. I think right now Danny is in the lead with 0.
And I'll be changing in a separate dressing room because I'm better than everybody else.
Because we asked you to.
Exactly, because I'm not allowed in the big boy dressing room. And Danny, thank you for being here as always and for stepping in for John, who we wish well. And thank you for doing your bits and bobs as well.
Oh, thank you very much, Chris, for just being you. That's all we can ask, and that's all you deliver.
I mean, what can I say? Legendary doesn't even cut it, but you're welcome.
Yes.
One day people are going to take it seriously and be like, who's that arrogant fuck who presents that podcast? It's like, honestly, I'm just taking the mick, everybody.
Which outro do you want? Do you want the Stephen Dave or do you want the Enfield 89?
Oh, always Stephen Dave. Always Stephen Dave, naturally. Right, that's it. We're off. Thank you very much for joining us. As Mr. Boblek says, remember, tell your kids, tell your family, tell everybody you know. Fuck Ellis. We have been a Bergkamp Wonderland. Good night, all.
As soon as I scored that goal, I was fucking livid. Get down, dog. Splendid business.
He nearly caught the bloody thing. What are you talking about?
So I was just eating a full quiche. Well, you don't often see them at Ibs, so when you see them in the supermarket, they need to be swagged, microwaved immediately, and get the brown sauce on and bosh, Bob's your uncle.
Never in doubt.